Greetings, travelers. Welcome back to the Fractured and Alterac Valley wild card review, this time for the Warrior class. This is the last of the class reviews, and then we're heading over to the neutrals. We're doing this for Warrior, and Warrior has a problem. That problem is Raid the Docks. Raid the Docks is absurdly powerful to the point that if you're not playing Raid the Docks and you're playing Warrior, you're doing something wrong. I have to be upfront with you. None of the cards that are coming out of Fractured and Alterac Valley work in a Raid the Docks deck, which means that as long as that deck is a big thing, none of these cards are going to be big things. They'd all be C tier at best. We have to evaluate these cards in the context that Questline Pirate Warrior is not always going to exist in its current form. And if that's the case, then these cards get a lot more interesting. We're going to give these cards the benefit of the doubt from that perspective at least. So let's take a closer look. First card up is Axe Berserker. 4 mana, 3/5 rush minion with honorable kill, draw a weapon. Warrior has a lot of weapons, but you're probably going to be fetching either Ankar or Outrider's Axe most likely. There's some other corner cases too, but those are probably the best options. 3/5 rush minion is respectable. I see this card as probably being a respectable generic card, but it has to compete with a bunch of other good things that Warrior does, not even counting Raid the Docks. It might be hard to find the room for something like this and it'd be worth it. I think calling this card B tier is ambitious, but I think the card's respectable. Next up is Glory Chaser, 3 mana 4/3. After you play a taunt minion, draw a card. So this is the World Champion inspired card. It's an interesting engine, probably works a lot better in Wild than it would in Standard, because you have access to cards like Frighten Flunky, Target Dummy, like some cheap options for enabling this engine, right? I think the engine has potential, but working only with taunt minions does narrow that potential a little bit. You can probably do something, but that's something that you're doing is probably not going to be the best thing that Warrior's going to be doing. Shrug shoulders. So we're calling this one C tier. Next is Iceblood Garrison, 2 mana. At the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to all minions, last 3 turns. This card is probably very useful in old school control warrior decks. This card reminds me of a lot of old 1 damage AoE control cards that used to be pretty popular, like things like Blood Razor, things like Warpath, stuff like that, right? Continuous repeating damage that was high value. This is the same kind of time release effect that we saw of the other objective cards, but the advantage to this card is that this can really make your opponent's plays very awkward for a significant amount of time. For instance, consider Odd Paladin. This card solos Odd Paladin for 3 turns straight. You can really lay waste to aggro boards with this. It's pretty similar in power to Doomsayer, honestly, except it lasts longer than Doomsayer. And it deals damage to your minions too, so you can use it to trigger Frenzy and some other interesting effects. Like I think the card has potential. Iceblood Garrison mirrors are probably miserable experiences, so hopefully it's not too popular, right? Like I want to be able to play this card and not have to deal with anyone else playing with it. Anyway, I'm going to call this one B tier. Next is Shield Shatter, 10 mana frost spell. Text is deal 5 damage to all minions, costs 1 less for each armor that you have. Now, Warrior's obviously very good at gaining tons of armor all at once in Wild. One other thing I want to mention with this card is how well it pairs with another card that is coming out in this set, Frozen Buckler, so I'll review that one at the same time. Frozen Buckler is 2 mana frost spell, gain 10 armor, at the start of your next turn, lose 5 armor. So there's an obvious combo here. You play Frozen Buckler, gain 10 armor, have a 0 mana Shield Shatter, deal 5 damage AoE to everything for 2 cards. The Frozen Buckler gives you 5 armor permanently, 5 armor temporary, so you still get some value out of that. It seems like a pretty solid combo, obviously designed to work very well together, but they're also pretty useful outside of that particular combo too. Shield Shatter is the most obvious of the two as far as continuing to be useful, but you can play it alongside Armorsmith, Risky Skipper kind of combos, so clearly pretty good there. You can make this thing very cheap very quickly. Frozen Buckler might seem like a bad deal, but consider this. We used to have to play cards like Bring It On in order to get like this much armor up front, and Bring It On is a terrible card. Like compared to like Ironhide. Ironhide's a terrible card. Compared to like Heavy Plate. Heavy Plate's not a good card either. There's so many bad armor cards. This is a cheap armor card that gives you a bunch of armor up front, doesn't have that much of a drawback. Is armor high value? Not really. But here's another thing this card does too. Keep in mind, losing 5 armor is not the same as taking 5 damage. So if you play this and your opponent has 10 attack worth of minions, you basically play Timeout for 2 mana. It's probably not a high value card otherwise, but it's an interesting defensive card. I'm looking forward to seeing if it's worth playing. Anyway, evaluating these cards together, I'm going to rate Shield Shatter as A tier, but I'm going to rate Frozen Buckler as C tier. All right, next up is To the Front. 2 mana spell. Your minions cost 2 less this turn, but not less than 1. So they kind of learned their lesson with Sorcerer's Apprentice, I guess. Clearly a combo enabler. The idea is you stockpile your combo minions, you play To the Front, you do a bunch of mana cheating, and you kill your opponent. What's not to like? The upfront obvious combo is ETC. There's probably a Charge Warrior combo in there somewhere too. Maybe a Nomergon Infantry combo. I don't know. I think this is a card that has a pretty strong niche application that you're definitely going to see one way or another. So we're going to call To the Front a B tier card. All right, next is Scrapsmith. 3 mana, 2/4 taunt. Battlecry, add 2/4 grunts with taunt to your hand. So it's a lot of value, but the card itself is relatively weak and the cards that you get are relatively weak. I think I'm going to rate this one tentatively as a C tier card. Okay, Captain Galvangar. 6 mana, 6/6. Battlecry. If you've gained 15 or more armor this game, gain +3/+3 and charge. It's a lot of gain. Game. Blah. I'm getting it tongue-tied. So with upsides, 6 mana, 9/9 charge. You guys like 6 mana, 9/9 charge minions, right? Awesome. Good. Cool. Quite playable. Trick is getting to 15 armor. Like Risky Skipper Armorsmith definitely can make that happen. So probably a decent auxiliary win con for that style of deck. Like there's some cool things you can do with this card. I think it's very strong. I'm kind of pleased to see that the gain a bunch of armor cards are all even costed. They don't fit obviously an Odd Warrior. I don't know if they're actually considering Wild on those designs or if it's just a coincidence. Anyway, I think Galvangar is actually a really strong card. I'm going to put him A tier. Last card before the hero is Snowed In. 3 mana Frost spell, destroy a damaged minion, freeze all other minions. It's Execute plus Frost Nova. That's probably pretty good. Execute hasn't really been a viable warrior removal card for a very long time because it kind of got power crept by Coerce, right? Coerce is a little bit more expensive, but can be unconditional. This is always conditional, but having the Frost Nova attached to the Execute is probably like that's a kind of effect that Warrior really hasn't had access to before, is Mass Freeze. I think it could be good, but obviously not amazing. So we're going to call this one C tier. Finally, we have the hero card. Last hero of the set, Rokara the Valorous. 7 mana, Battlecry, equip a 5/2 Unstoppable Force. Hero power is Grand Slam. 2 mana, deal 2 damage. Honorable Kill, gain 4 armor. So Rokara turns you into kind of a damage dealing engine of death. Or at least for a couple of turns. The 5/2 Unstoppable Force is a weapon. It says, after you attack a minion, smash it into the enemy hero. I assume the minion deals damage equal to its attack to the enemy hero. So you can use Unstoppable Force to punch through taunts, to turn big enemy minions into face damage. The 5/2 by itself is Arcanite Reaper, which is respectable. You get an upgraded hero power. So I think the value's there. The trouble with Rokara is it's kind of plain. Honestly, Tamsin and Cariol do a bunch of things, like Cariol especially. Cariol has the unmovable object, the foil to the Unstoppable Force, and I think unmovable object is just straight up a better weapon. Just over the long term if the game goes long. Unstoppable Force is a better weapon if the game's supposed to go short, but if you're the kind of person that's trying to do the beatdown, then 7 mana for a 5/2 weapon's not really something you want to be doing. Like, it's probably not as good of an upside as you think. I don't know. Like, I want to give this card the benefit of the doubt, but it just seems so plain. We'll call it C tier. Now for Warrior, I think it's interesting that there are a handful of Warrior cards that are actually very strong. Like Shield Shatter is going to see play, Galvangar is going to see play. I think there are a few other cards like Axe Berserker, Iceblood Garrison, To the Front have like niche applications, or like there are going to be some interesting homes for those cards. But having 2 A tier cards is better than the other classes on average, right? Most of the class cards in Alterac Valley seem to be like semi-viable, with a handful of like obvious viables. Nothing clearly broken, at least not in the context of Wild. Are we going to discover that some of these cards are actually busted? Very well maybe. But I think if Alterac Valley has anything truly spicy for Wild, it's probably in the neutrals. So we're going to keep going. The next video is going to be the neutral cards. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.